So good evening. I make it 6 o'clock, so I'm going to make a start. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Exit by the door by which you enter the room or by the fire exit, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Lloyds Bank on the opposite side of the road. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make sure you're known to a member of staff, and please ask if you can turn your mobile phone to off or silent during the duration of the meeting. This meeting is being recorded for future publication on the Council's website and YouTube channel. Announcements. I've got to welcome Mr. John Healy to the panel as a new co-opted member. Welcome. And welcome Stacey Vale, the new Transport and Depot Manager. Okay, apologies. Any apologies? Councillor Sorry. Okay. And Councillor Smith. Okay. Councillor Smith's apologies going in? I'll put it as a... yes, okay. So move on to the item 3, the minutes to approve and sign the minutes of the ordinary meeting on the 16th of October and the extraordinary meeting on the 4th of December. Members happy for me to sign both those? Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you, Chair. In the minutes it said that we would have the Sea Scouts access to open water. It would come back to the OSP. And unfortunately, I can't find anything on this OSP about the Sea Scouts, which it said it would come back to this OSP today. So can I just ask what's happened to that, please?
Okay. That will be dealt with under an extraordinary meeting that I'll mention at the end of the meeting. It will be coming, but not to this one, unfortunately. The report wasn't ready.
So's the election, Chair.
Moving on to declarations of interest. Any member declare any interest as not included in the schedule available or on the web link? Any member? No. Public consultation. There are no public speakers this evening. Item 6, questions to Cabinet. There are no Cabinet members available for questions. Which moves us on to item 7, the integrated...
Chair. I think it's pretty poor of the Cabinet not to attend an OSP. There is 5 or 6 in the Cabinet, and I would have thought they'd have had the decency to turn up for the OSP. I think that we ought to ask them, if we're going to have an extraordinary council meeting, that at least they have the decency to turn up. Thank you.
I will relay that back to them.
Okay, a couple of residents within my ward have both raised the fact that there's an extremely large amount of litter off the A444 on both sides between the College Street roundabout and the George Eliot Hospital roundabout. It's the main entrance into Nuneaton, so it's creating an appalling impression of our town. I just wondered if something could be actioned to deal with it and if we could be updated on that.
She'll pass it on to the appropriate Cabinet member. Councillor Guttridge.
Okay.
No, it's not. Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you. I was going to ask a question for Councillor Brady Hughes, and my question was, can she tell me about Attleborough Cemetery. We've heard a lot about the no flooding or flooding, but I believe in the last week that a friend of mine went to Attleborough Cemetery and it was flooded. So I was going to ask her about that. And also I was going to ask her another question about the physical activity hub, but hopefully she'll come to the next meeting out of courtesy. Thank you.
Something here, haven't I? Councillor Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to add to Councillor Collett's remarks, although I know it is being dealt with by the team over there, that the litter does actually go all the way down to the RECO. It doesn't stop at the Bedworth boundary. It does go all the way down both sides, but I know it's already being dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, likewise, I had a question for Councillor Hughes with regards to cemeteries. A resident raised a concern about the Marsden Lane Cemetery where traffic is concerned and made a suggestion that a one-way system be put in place so that vehicles don't have to pass each other in opposite directions and going on to the verges, etc., and causing issues. So I have raised that already. So I was wondering if there was an answer from that. Thank you.
So if you could minister those, Kelly, and if they can be passed on to the cabinet members and the answers sent back to all the committee, please. So move on to item 7, integrated performance report. Over to yourself, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Before I get to the second quarter summary, I just wanted to give a quick update on the corporate performance review. At the last round of meetings, we were waiting on a business case for external support, which will allow us to automate the process as much as possible using Microsoft Power BI software. Approval has now been given, and that external support commenced on the 6th of January. And at the moment, we're sort of scoping the project to have a timeline for implementation. So now moving on to the actual review for the second quarter, can I refer the panel to page 17, please, which shows the summary charts. I'll start with bottom left, which is the strategic risk register. The position is exactly the same as the last quarter. 4 risks within the remit of the panel, 2 being net amber and 2 are net green. I'll remind the panel that net means given the mitigations that are put in place. The 2 net amber risks are operation of the sub-regional recycling facility, R22, and the other one is R25, non-compliance with freedom of information, environmental information and general data protection regulations. Moving on to the right-hand side of summary charts, freedom of information and environmental requests, which have a 20-day turnaround. There are slightly more have been received this year, 446 compared to 391 last year. No high volume trends have been identified. As regards complaints, which have a 10-day turnaround, slightly less have been received this year, 727 compared to 786 last year. Also, no high volume trends have been identified. In relation to member inquiry forms, much less have been received this year, 279 compared to 394 last year. Housing with 129 and leisure and culture 58 make up 60% of the total for this year. And finally, moving on to the performance information. Of the 14 measures that are within the remit of the panel, 12 have comparable trend data. 4 have improved, 5 declined, and 3 have stayed the same. 1 has no comparable trend data, and 1 is not yet available. Details of all of these are shown on pages 18 to 21 of the agenda. And that concludes the summary, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Any member? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Steve, I'm just curious about the MEF numbers, because I've noticed that the numbers have gone down in other OSPs as well, or in other areas. So do you have any idea what is causing that decline in terms of, I don't know, is it certain councils not putting requests in where they used to, or is it just across the board lower numbers?
I actually believe it's because there are a number of forms that we've got in place, like housing, waste management, etc. I think members are actually using the correct forms more than they used to, and rather than going down the MEF member inquiry form process. But as regards specific numbers, I wouldn't have that information available. But having spoken to the officer concerned, he did indicate that more members are using the correct forms, you know, the designated forms, rather than going down the member inquiry form route.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Steve, just another comment following on there from Councillor there regarding, obviously, members' inquiries. The numbers have gone down, as you say. Looking at what you've mentioned here, housing, leisure and culture represent 2/3 of the total. Is there any other significant area, or is it just the odd percentages in the different areas of member inquiries?
Exactly that, Councillor. Yeah, I've picked up, you know, the key areas where the main numbers are. The rest are, you know, pretty evenly spread, more or less.
Yeah, that's fine. And just the other point on the performance factors, I think some of this is going to be covered later on with regards to one thing it did highlight from me, but I think it's been reported further on, is the social value saving for national health. I think that's in Katie's report, I believe. Passport to leisure, etc. That's again likewise, and leisure attendance. I think that's all been covered later on anyway, isn't it? And then likewise, the recycling again is being covered later on in the agenda. But no, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you. Just a quick regarding number of scheduled ground maintenance tasks completed by contractor. Is that data coming directly as reported by contractor? So contractor basically ticks off, I completed it. Is that where it's coming from?
I believe that is the case. Yes.
I've no other members indicate. So thank you very much for your time, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
We'll move on to item 8, tree strategy. Katie.
Thank you, Chair. So the tree strategy, the new strategy marks a change of how the council will start to manage trees in the borough, from a reactive to a proactive approach based on risk. So this strategy covers trees within parks, open spaces and cemeteries that are owned by the council, but it doesn't include those within housing, private or Warwickshire County Council trees. So I just wanted to make that point initially, that's what this strategy covers. So previously, trees were managed when a specific issue was discovered, more on an ad hoc surveying basis based on as things appeared. But over the past couple of years, we've already started to move to a more proactive way. We've undergone surveys, we've appointed teams to actually review our trees and management processes. In 2022, the tree stock in our cemeteries was surveyed and works were carried out on a tree based on risk and need. And in 2025, we zoned our parks and green spaces around trees that required surveying, and 20 zones surveys were carried out last year. These sites were chosen based on their activity level. So, for example, in and around play areas, high traffic walkways, etc. And then ongoing work is being done to address those issues as and when they come forward. So the strategies, and I'll go through the main aims of the strategy, but some of the work of the proactiveness within the strategy has already commenced. So the strategy's got 5 main aims: a proactive and sustainable approach to tree management, protecting and enhancing our existing tree stock, a considered approach to tree planting and replacement, realising the future value of our trees, and fostering community stewardship and engagement. The strapline throughout the strategy is right tree, right place, right reason, and we will use that in all of our decision making. Historically, we've got trees that have been planted in inappropriate places, no consideration for the species and also the eventual size that they will grow into. And over a number of years, that's obviously reduced the way that those trees can grow and develop, but also has kind of addressed issues that have occurred. So we're working towards a more proactive approach, and this strategy is obviously going to help us with that way forward. So the recommendation to the panel is to recommend the strategy to Cabinet for adoption. Thank you, Chair.
Any member? Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Katie. Really comprehensive document. I wanted to ask a question specific about evidence-based view of risks. So basically it says here that risks refers to likelihood for that hazard actually resulting in harm to a person, property or other defined target. Now I note that I think further 2 or 3 pages talk about well basically harm to a person. Where or what's your thinking behind of actual harm to a property or other defined target, how it's going to be reflected in strategy? And should I ask a second question as well? Yeah, and the other bit was, in terms of the targets and aims, how do we actually know that this strategy is going to be successful?
Okay, so the first question, Councillor, so the likelihood and everything that the risk is based on is solely, so our officer has obviously commenced that and reviewed that based on health and safety and risk. It's taking into consideration, like I mentioned, location, footfall, proximity to areas where potentially children are playing or school routes or where there's a high volume of people where it increases the risk versus maybe the end of a cul-de-sac where there's a large green space that is limited access. So a review's done on that basis. That doesn't discount properties as part of that, and that would be taken into that likelihood and risk and severity. So everything would be considered on a risk basis depending on proximity really to certain areas. Hopefully that answers that question.
I do appreciate that, and I think, you know, there's one aspect is about number of people, another is how permanently you have a certain amount of, so I wouldn't necessarily correlate between number of people moving around and a tree. You know, sometimes you can have a tree which dangerously, as it happened, you know, overhangs, you know, it's maybe on some council's land or something, but it overhangs a potential property where you have a, you know, few people, but who permanently, you know, more or less permanently spend their time. So, and again, I do appreciate that things can change. What I'm kind of saying here is that if this is a strategy, this is not an individual case. It is a strategy of how you look at things and approach things and assess risks. So I'm saying from a strategic point of view, not from individual cases, individual schools or individual playgrounds, from a strategic point of view, I think it misses what's being defined in introduction as a number of various risks. It misses a strategic view on all of the risks, you know, depending obviously on probability and the impact. Thank you.
And sorry, Councillor, just remind me on the second question that you asked.
The second question was, how do you actually measure the success of this strategy? What kind of, you know, how can you actually say that it makes a difference from what's been before?
I guess in relation to measuring it from a surveying perspective, that's updating our database on the trees we've got, the condition they're in, and also the proactive management of them. So although it's potentially not initially tangible, we've got a clear database of our trees, the standard they're in, the risk associated with them, and then also addressing any issues or concerns proactively rather than at a point where a limb's fallen off or there's potential issues with that tree that we'll work through.
Thank you, Katie. I fully support the tree strategy. We need a strategy. When I was Cabinet portfolio holder, we got nothing. There was nothing there. I went in and it's like old Mother Hubbard's cupboard. There was nothing there. And now we've got a strategy and we know we can look and see where the trees are. We've got approximately 120,000 trees in the borough. And I instigated the right tree, right place, and we've got too many wrong trees in the wrong places. And I fully support them in the Parks Department. And I'm only sad that the Cabinet member's not here to launch it. But we've got, I'm picking up on what Councillor Rose said, we've got a lot of trees that have been planted, and this is going to be very difficult for me to say, have been planted in the wrong place as a remembrance tree and the wrong variety up against council walls, and eventually the roots grow and the wall falls down and then it's unsafe. So I fully support this strategy and I think it's long overdue. We were working on it when I was there, but I left before it was done. So I fully support this because everybody in the borough thinks all the trees are the council's. Well, they're not. There's the county council, there's private trees and other trees. The only thing I ask is that we keep planting more trees and we identify where we can plant trees and we plant the right tree in the right place, because the varieties have changed over the years with global warming and things. Gone are the days of the good old oak tree, which, you know, we are unfortunately in various places, i.e. Bolkington Wreck. There's one over 308 years old, and I believe they want to build something by it or take it down, which is wrong. It is wrong. They leave the trees alone. So I fully support this, and I think it's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Gutteridge, I fully support this new policy. And I definitely like the phrase or the catchphrase of right tree, right place for the right reason. Because I've seen obviously, as per everybody else, there are so many wrong trees in the wrong place. Now, some of that might be down to developers in the first place, planting trees that look nice on day one, but year 25, they're not quite as appropriate in the area they've been planted. One of the things I've got an issue with, and hopefully we can look at this retrospectively, because one of my residents in my area have got an issue with their property where a tree in open space in council land has caused damage, which is causing the house to, or an extension to the house to come away. Approach the council. The onus is on the owner to prove it, to get official surveyors in. Now that's wrong. This is a tree on council ground planted by, one assumes, the council at some stage, many, many moons ago, that's causing issue to their property. The onus should not be on the property owner to get all the information and the proof. It's obvious. I've been there. The walls are moving. You can see through daylight. So that's from my point is wrong. So that's where we should be looking at this in the long term. But also we should be able to look at the people like that who've got issues. And coming back to what I said about developers, does this cover new builds where there's landscaping? Now, obviously, within landscaping, developers need to put trees, various things. Have we got control over that? Because oak trees are lovely, but they get very big, for example. Not just oak trees, but a lot of species get very big. And if they're planted in the wrong place, 25 years down the road, there's issues, major issues. I have a subsequent question, but I'll pass that over first.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come at that in terms of planning, so the tree officer will have an input into any new planning applications, into what the developers submit as part of their application. Not all that land will come to the authority. Many planning applications now, the developer will have a self-manage, or they'll bring in a private company to manage those areas, so it's not necessarily it comes to the authority. But you're quite right, and as already been mentioned, we're picking up a legacy issue here. 25, 30 years ago, we've now got trees, wrong place, wrong variety, looked good for the first 5 years, and now it's people turn to the local authority to address those. As councillors have already mentioned, there's 120,000 trees. We're at the start of that journey. We've started that journey. We've got a strategy as to what trees have we got, what trees do we need to prioritise, because this isn't a quick fix. Once we've got the data, it'll then need to be ongoing and reviewed. But what we are doing is prioritising the ones that the tree officer, who's the expert, working with other experts from county where needed to identify what we perceive are the highest risks, and then we'll manage that through that risk profile. In terms of planning, that again, that is ongoing, but the tree officer and the input from planning is now, we've got a strategy, we'll be looking to implement that as part of the new borough plan, so the SPD documents will detail what we feel is the best for the planning application when it comes to planning applications committee, but not necessarily all those development areas will be ours. But I think the key is it's the right tree, the right variety in the right place. And for me personally, I'm also saying the right quality, because there are species that are no longer, there are species that we need to bring back in our destination parks, for one, that will be there for the next 50, 100 plus years, that people and our residents take you know, full sight of in terms of the areas that we've developed recently at Bedworth and Riversley Park. And I think for us, unfortunately, there are certain types of trees that actually don't do anything for our parks. They cut out the visibility, the fauna, the flora of those parks, and we're looking to improve that, unfortunately, for generations to come, because trees of this nature don't just happen. They're also very expensive, but I think one good tree is much better than 3 or 5 trees that don't give us anything in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, if I may. Passing on to the first question, in all fairness, like I said about the resident where the issues with a council tree on a piece of ground that should never have been planted there in the first place because it's got too big. Where does the resident go? Because they've been pushed back, and that's wrong. But that aside for a moment, but the next question, item 5 or point number 5, no direct implication identified under financial implications. Does that mean we have a decent budget put aside, increased from previous, because as Councillor Gutteridge said, there was very little there in the first place. So have we got a decent budget that we can actually carry out everything that's within this new strategy?
Is that in the report referencing the financial implication element? Oh, okay. On my summary, I've got in the financial implications that proactive tree assessments undertaken in 25-26 financial year in 20 areas of the park, obviously based on risk, but the work commenced has required budget to survey the works, and obviously naturally with surveying additional trees will come additional costs to rectify those. So that had been reviewed in the previous budget setting around support for tree works, and obviously is being addressed in the current budget setting process. But sorry if that's not in the main report.
Chair, if I just add to that, there was a slight correction error, and you've picked that up. I think what we're saying is we're assessing and having that data now as part of the software, and we'll know going forward. So that means in terms of proactively, we'll know the risk and number of trees we may have to look at in the following financial year. That can then be more accurately put in the budget setting process that we know the following year. Instead of guessing and a budget of, say, let's just say we've got 20,000 to do trees, we'll actually know with the proactive work is how many trees we've got to and what areas of work. So we'll be able to identify, based upon the tree contract, what those costs are, and that will form part of the budget setting for that following year. So we'll now have more accurate data and an accurate understanding of what those costs will be. And you're quite right, certain members will know if you have a tree pruned or taken down, these are not cheap costs. And we have to do that in areas of public safety and everything else, so it costs considerably more. Unfortunately, it's a legacy issue that we're picking up, and we've got to address that. So as Katie said, we're starting somewhere, but in terms of no direct impact, I think that was this financial year, because we've got that in process from the previous financial budget setting. But going forward, There's only one way that budget's going to be until we get to a point where we've managed the high risks, and then it's an ongoing maintenance. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Markham.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, how do we actually differentiate between the self-seeded trees? Because so many times we've been out or we've been called out because there's this tree and that tree there, and they've said, we didn't plant that one, it's obviously self-seeded, so we're not touching it, but the one next to it is the one that we planted. So now that we're starting this programme, will our grounds maintenance team, when they go out to surface or to do that area, will they actually be trying to get out a self-seeded tree before it starts to grow, so that we don't have the expense to get rid of it when it's grown, and we don't also have the same thing that we've got now where people complain and they're told that it's not our tree and it's not Warwickshire County Council's, in fact it's nobody's tree because it's self-seeded. Thank you.
Katie.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, and it is all based on the size of said tree, which will then decide between if it's an actual planted tree or whether it's a self-set, and whether the grounds maintenance contractor can remove that. But it is noted, and we are reviewing that as part of the new contract, and also the management of self-sets in those locations where they shouldn't be.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just, I could follow on from Councillor Walsh. The budget is quite interesting, but we don't, the budget is set, but can you tell me what the weather's going to do? Are we going to have wind? Are we going to have rain? It's, you know, sometimes it's a finger in the air and think, well, we spent that much last year, we've got this, that and the other. And it's a lot to do with the rain. We've had a drought this year, so the trees will not be taking up the water. So eventually, when it comes a bit more windy, the boughs will come down. So we shall need all the trees pruning back, i.e. on main roads and things like that. So I can fully understand, because I've sat in that hot seat, and it's my thing was, if I hadn't had a telling off by 10 o'clock in the morning, I were having a good day. But going on further, the tree officer we've got is a very good man. I work with him. Unfortunately, had to take an oak tree down in Galley Common. And he came to me and said, we've got to take this down. I said, well, hang on, let's have a look. And I had 3 reports, and I went out with him, and we physically looked, and he showed me where it was diseased and why it was growing, the canker. And so we took it down, we took the oak tree down, and then we planted 3 trees in place of it. And the tree officer is a very good gentleman. He's an acquired taste at times, he'll tell you blunt, a bit like me, but he's got a heart of gold, and he loves trees, a bit like myself. So I fully support the tree surge strategy again.
Councillor Smith.
So I've actually forgotten what the question was now. So if I remember, I'll...
No, I think that's all right. I've just got a couple of comments myself. I'm a little concerned about the low priorities on page 44 and 45. You know, you said about working with the community, and yet you're classing it as creating a framework for community support as a low priority. So I think they need looking at in terms of, you know, you can't say you want to work with the community and then have it down as a low priority. That, to me, that's not, and establish a funding strategy. Now I would say that's got to be fairly high if you're saying we're short of money, etc., etc. But that's down as a low priority, and a couple of the other things. So I've got concerns about that. You've said about working with the community. There isn't an awful lot in the strategy about working with them, because as I've worked with you myself as a community advocate and planted trees, to be told 2 days before we're ready to put them in on a piece of council land that everybody had agreed to, well, where's your risk assessments and your insurance? Well, I'm sorry, all a little too late. And you would not expect community groups to have to be able to do risk assessments and have insurance for planting trees, especially on a piece of council land. So I think that's something within the strategy that I think you need to look at. If you want to do community engagement, you need to do it and do it properly. I mean, and also in this document there needs to be a glossary of terms. There's an awful lot of acronyms in there that need looking at. So I'm not aware of anybody else, so are we happy to note the report with the comments we've made? Yes. Okay. We're happy to recommend it to Cabinet with the comments, additional comments put on. Yes? Yeah. Okay. Move on to item 9, sub-regional recycling facility. Assistant Director, is that yourself, Alistair?
We're just changing over so you can see the presentation. Okay, good evening everybody. Been asked to do a presentation on where we are with the Sherborne Materials Recycling Facility. Just a quick overview of where we are at the moment. Sherborne, we're given both the Recycling of the Year Award as well as Independent Operator of the Year Award at the National Recycling Awards in 2025, and they also were awarded Best Commercial and Commercialisation and Enterprisation, can't say these words, initiative at the Association, APSI Annual Awards 2025. So the plant is being recognised by peers and others around actually what it's been able to achieve since it's been in operation, which is really positive. We continue our ongoing contractor relations. We have a contract with Sherborne and take our material there. We carry out quarterly visits and inspections, and we work with them on our sample monitoring. So we have a system in place where a number of loads each month are taken aside and sampled to understand what is the composition, what's in there that shouldn't be in there, and then we use that information to understand how we need to change our approach to communicating with residents, but also how we can then work with Sherborne themselves in terms of the operation of the plant to try and maximise the outcome at the end, or the quality of the material. We have been working, there was a meeting the other week with them along with all the other partners about communications and materials, about videos, and there's other conversations taking place about how we can invest in that more together with Sherborne to share the joint benefit. Flexi plastics as a core material is required to be collected from March 2027. People will be aware and seen it in the press around simpler recycling, which requires a number of materials to be collected from March 2026. We actually meet all those criteria. Flexi plastics has been introduced across Warwickshire in stages. We are doing a soft implementation. The type of plastics is the really soft film, etc. It does cause issues in terms of where it goes to be processed. It is a cost to us. We have to pay for it per tonne. We want to do a soft launch, and particularly around how we do that with our waste collection contractor, Coventry, so we do that jointly with them. And I do realise there's a typo at the end of this. So happy to take any questions on that, but it will be coming. But if people start to put those in their bins at the moment, we're not going to class it as contamination. We're just simply not promoting it. In terms of the performance, in terms of what we're taking to the plant, so 8 different partners will all take their material to the plant. We try and predict what our tonnage will be over a monthly basis. That allows us to track our performance, but it also allows Sherborne to understand what they're going to be processing through. We're actually above what we were forecasting by 215 tonnes. It has actually slightly dipped in December. The information came through today. What we obviously want is that to be the highest possible, because we're taking recycling material out of the general waste bin, and obviously the profitability of the plant, the more recycling we take and the more they sell, we get a share of the profit share of the sales of material. In terms of our performance, so what we split our performance into different elements in terms of the different materials. What we talk about dry recycling, that is a brown lidded bin. That performance is quite steady at 22.44%. What we're looking for, obviously, is to try and maximise that again, and we'll come on to some steps that we'll be taking moving forward to try and encourage that. When you look at our combined recycling, so this is what goes in the garden green bin as well as the material that goes into the brown lidded bin, we're at 39.05%. So 61% of our material is refuse, which is general waste, but 49% is recycling as we would class. Again, we've got steps to try and improve that. So in terms of improving recycling, our waste engagement and promotion officer came into post in November. He was an existing member of staff who has the operational knowledge but also has the skill set to engage with a wide range of individuals and groups, and he's slowly getting his feet. As we've done before, we did a social media campaign up to Christmas, and we did 24 days of Christmas trying to communicate and use social media and try and get people to engage at that time of the year. We are starting to re-establish the dry recycling service in flats and throughout the borough. Historically, in the past, if people were seen to contaminate those bins, the council's policy would be to simply just remove that service from them. That's not acceptable. So at the moment, we're going back in and doing the auditing to make sure that we can get the bins back in, but then start the process engaging with the tenants, but also the managing agents, including our own colleagues, and that will hopefully see an increase in the recycling figures that we're seeing. We're also doing a refresh of our web pages and making sure that the content is updated and user-friendly. That responsibility sits with ourselves, and we also want to make it easier for residents to be able to report issues and concerns. We talked earlier about the number of complaints, number of member inquiries. We want to make sure that we're actually engaging and we're listening and making it as easy and understandable as possible for residents to use the service. We're also looking at the guides as well, and we're looking at getting those updated and looking at how we can make those simpler. And we'll be running recycling engagement events again through the summer. We've got our mobile unit. We're very fortunate to have our mobile unit. The process of having that upgraded and delivery and the wrap on it updated. I think we're working, Andrew, with was it a Scouts? Beavers group. We tried to engage with schools. They didn't really want to engage us, but we had a route into Beavers, and we've asked those that attend the group to design delivery that goes on it, which hopefully will be nice and engage people in that. And that's the update for today. Questions?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking back at the recycling percentages. What are they a percentage of? So, for example, the dry recycling is steady at around 22.44%. But what is that? What percentage? What metric are we using there for the percentage?
So that's a measure of all the waste we collect. So we're a waste collection authority, so what we're counting there is what people put in their household waste bin. So the 3 bins that people can use, we've got 2 standard, we've got the 3rd one, which is the garden waste. We have to report nationally in all the household waste we collect. So of that tonnage material, the percentage of the material collected is the 22%.
Thank you. That was really comprehensive. Quick question. In terms of those parameters, do we have any comparison with other waste collecting authorities of how well we are doing or how not well we are doing? And in terms of engagement and promotion, I was just wondering now when I think recycling is pretty established, and especially with kind of wheelie bins now kind of, well, essentially you can't fit all the household waste in one. So I think recycling is pretty much, I think, to be done. I mean, what kind of messages we are promoting through engagement, and how do we measure that those awareness campaigns are effective? Thank you.
One thing that we're missing at the moment is key data. We've got the high level figures. What we're doing at the moment is using the new team. We've got new routing software is to understand how much waste or material is collected per vehicle per round, and therefore we can look across the district and we can understand which areas are performing really well against a medium of where we are, and that's where we're going to look to target. We've got information called Acorn data, which is about the demographics, the type of households people are living in. So you've got some areas that will have maybe more couple, elderly type of properties. You've probably got people that are living there, young families. They produce different types of waste in different levels, and maybe what would be useful for us to do is come to a future meeting and talk about how that impacts and how we're going to use that information, and then we can do the targeted comms. In terms of our performance, we will look at ourselves across Warwickshire. There is a very significant difference between north and south in terms of performance. If you look at Stratford upon Avon, you look at Warwick, the type of houses, the type of services they've got, they are very high performing in terms of their recycling figures, but they also produce more waste because the demographic, the amount of affordable income they've got, they live slightly different lifestyles to unfortunately some of our residents in our area. So we are at the bottom end and we recognise that, but that's what we're trying to do in terms of improving that and understanding how we can support people. We're not the worst. If you look at where we are nationally, we're not too bad, but we're not the best we could be. And again, it comes down to the type of policies that you as elected members are in terms of comfortable in terms of how we enforce an approach. In the south of the borough, they've got the 1, 2, 3 plus performance, so they empty the residual bin every 3 weeks. That has a benefit because it pushes people to use the recycling, but also brings other challenges in terms of environmental impact because it doesn't work for everybody. So we're looking at how, when we're coming on to food waste, how food waste will take the food waste out of the general waste bin, which creates more space. If we've got the recycling working fully, do we still need to empty that 240 litre bin? Is it achievable, or are we trying to set our residents up to fail? And that's the problem, because if the system isn't right, they will find a way to get rid of that material. That could be fly tipping, that could be in the street litter bins, it could be in the parks, it could just be fly tips. So we're going to take a comprehensive view and take baby steps, looking at what our neighbouring authorities are doing. One of the things we want to do is make sure that we're aligned across in terms of our messages. We've all using Sherborne, Rugby, North Warwickshire and ourselves are all putting food waste in. So let's look at messages we can work on that. A lot of people will work in one area but live in the other, in the north. So there's a lot we can do on it, but I think going back to the comments on the tree strategy, we're working on it and trying to get to a point where actually we're improving it and the steps are coming. We've got the team. We've got Andrew here. You've got Stacey, who's our new depot and transport manager. That started 3 weeks ago. And she's still here, which is really good. We've got a new team going forward, and I think you would hopefully see. So this is where we are at the moment. Touch wood, we will be able to come back and show actually there's a greater performance. What might be helpful, just taking on the comments around that percentage, is actually what does that look like in tonnes? And we can bring a report where we compare ourselves to our neighbouring councils.
Councillor Markham.
Thank you, Chair. Last month, North Warwickshire had a vehicle fire with the batteries, and this is at least the second one because the other one was at the depot. But will the new engagement and promotions officer, will he or she be actually promoting education on these batteries and where we can actually put them? And are we actually arranging anywhere that the residents can dispose of these batteries other than in their bin?
We've been working and discussing this with the county council. We're the waste collection authority. I get that they're trying to move away from. They're all our residents. They're not counties. They're not the boroughs. We did explore last year the opportunity of providing a curbside service. At that point, it was quite difficult to achieve. We are re-looking at that, and that we're around us fitting cages to the existing fleet. And therefore we would be saying to residents, if you've got batteries, you've got vapes, leave them out in a plastic bag, we'll pick them up. That causes other challenges around insurance, but I take the point, and we'll go and Troy, who's the new waste engagement officer, will go and push that message again. We did put some messages out last year around that. We can re-emphasise that as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I know that some authorities, they actually attach something to the handle of the bin, don't they? So like a bag or something, so that they can actually put them in there as opposed to putting them in the bin. So they're out of the house. but when we collect them. So are you saying that if they did that, we haven't got the facilities to collect them because it's still going to go in the wagon? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, if we can quite easily get residents to say, okay, get a plastic bag, be a little food bag, put your batteries, your vapes in that. We need to segregate that on the vehicle, and we've looked at options around fitting an external cage. The challenge with that is then you're carrying quite a high volume of very combustible material, which has an impact possibly on insurance. So we started to soft explore it last year. We pulled away from it. We just had a conversation. We're going to explore it again. We've seen that other local authorities have been able to pull it off, so why can't we? But that would resolve that issue and actually would be very beneficial to us. It would also try and prevent us from having to then deal with the consequences that North Warwickshire have had, unfortunately. So yeah, it is something that we're looking at and reacting to.
Just a couple of comments myself. Obviously, I'm pleased that we've got the education officer in. It's something to push for. I'm pleased they're actually in place and they'll be doing work. I would like to think that the county and Sherborne would come alongside us to help and support that work, rather than say, oh, well, you've got an education officer, you do it. So that message needs to go back. I'm pleased that we're looking again at the flats, because that has been bugbear in terms of, you know, we're letting everybody else recycle but not the flats. I'm glad we're looking at that again. In terms of composting, which I've just had, I think we all had an email in terms of this is the composting schedule for this year, recycle. Doesn't seem to be any in Nuneaton, so I'll leave that one with you to have a word with county. They seem to put one in Bedworth but not in Nuneaton for some reason. So, and thank you for that. So, but you're happy to note the recommendations in the report? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alan. On food waste collection progress, Andrew.
Thank you. So we were asked to issue a quick briefing memo regarding the food waste collections, which obviously we brought to the last OSP for sign-off. There is a cabinet paper coming to the February cabinet group, so I can only provide so much information in anticipation of that moving forward, but there is a brief summary there. Matters are moving along in accordance with what we agreed. There was a slight delay around the vehicle procurement side of things, purely because at the end of the year we were made aware of a new vehicle on the market that significantly improves a couple of the things we had concerns around. In particular, how we store the bins on the back of the wagon. So the 7.5 ton vehicles that we were looking at procuring, up till that point, didn't have a bin storage option. So you were trying to strap them onto the back of the vehicle some way, which at some point would probably cause us a problem. One would come loose. These new models do have a storage point on them specifically for the bins. So that is a significant improvement. They also have a wash system built into them that we can plug into with a hose pipe to help wash the back of these vehicles out. They are different to normal bin lorries. They are sealed and they will have food waste in them, so they will get a bit unpleasant. Requirements are loosely around they should be washed once a week. Without this system, we would be tipping the back of that vehicle up and having someone stand underneath it with a jet washer. So this does improve that scenario as well. So we have slightly delayed the procurement whilst we're waiting for those vehicles to come onto the market and actually be fully available. We saw one down at Faunzola's depot in November, but they weren't actually available to purchase at that point. They are now, and they're coming into the framework system, so we should be able to move forward. And the other side of things are moving along quite nicely. We've got the procurement on the caddies moving forward. That should be going into the market anytime over the next couple of weeks. We are inviting that into the open market because we think it's the best way to get the most competitive prices on the ones that we've looked at. And then we're plotting out the actual delivery of it and the timescales for it. We are still targeting the October deadline for rolling out the service. The delay on the vehicles hasn't sort of set us back in terms of timescales at this moment in time. And we're also developing a fairly extensive range of communications and plans around how we get the message out to the residents to use this service and engage with it. That is one of our sort of key concerns around making sure that people actually see it as a positive and use those containers. I think that pretty much covers it.
Any member? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Andrew, for putting that together for us. With regards to the new vehicles that you're now looking at, one, do they come within the budget we'd already set at the working party?
Yes, they do. They are still within the finance. The changes to them are quite minor, but they are still within the parameters that we talked about and that we sort of discussed at the working group.
And secondly, with regards to the cleaning out of the vehicles themselves, the bin part of it, obviously, I'm assuming that you'll be using some form of chemicals because they're going to be, you can't, water alone, I imagine, is not going to be sufficient. So there will be some sort of chemical cleaning process that goes on that. Is that part of the wagon, or is that something that will have to be brought in separately?
Yeah, so for the cleansing, we've had a variety of discussions and we're trying to look at what other authorities are doing on that at the moment. Most of them use fairly mild detergents on them, with the exception of maybe an annual heavy clean, which would probably be undertaken by a paid professional to undertake. Most of the washing we anticipate just being water, with occasional need for detergent if we're getting particular odours or anything, you know, worse sticking into those vehicles.
Councillor Malcolm.
Oh, okay. So my question is something that I think we've spoke about before. I know we're not rolling it out till the October time, but it should have gone out earlier than that. So can you just confirm that we won't be penalised monetarily wise because we're rolling it out a bit later? I know we're not the only authority that's not going to roll it out in time, but can you confirm we've not been penalised?
Yeah, so at the moment there are no indications there would be any penalties taken. In relation to, and I can't remember where it was, there was a couple of authorities last week that had a press release that DEFRA added their comments into, stating that they were delaying due to sort of operational issues and various other bits and pieces. They will roll it out, I think, roughly similar times to us. DEFRA's comments on that were quite light around, whilst we want people to work to the deadlines, we understand there are operational reasons not to. It's currently estimated that around 50% of authorities will have rolled it out by the April deadline. So it's relatively small numbers that will be on it. We are having a conversation with DEFRA around that, and we will sort of confirm once they've given us that written agreement, we can be more certain about it. But there are no current indications that there is anything more formal coming. And then the caveat to that slightly is as well that everywhere should be doing commercial food waste collections that has, you know, the scales that meet the requirements since last March. There has been no formal action taken anywhere about that at the moment across the country.
I've got any other members? Everybody's happy? To note the briefing report. Yep. Thank you. Move on to item 11, forward plan, which is for noting on page 83. And then move on to item 12, the work programme. I am due to set a date for an additional OSP to discuss the Sea Scouts, the lawn burials and the grounds maintenance procurement, because the grounds maintenance procurement working party will finish their work towards the end of February, so it would be prudent to bring it to this committee, and I'm looking at the 26th of March. So do for your diaries. Councillor Guthridge.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have an extraordinary meeting. Can I just ask that we get the agenda in advance, you know, at least a fortnight, please, before this extraordinary general meeting, because we seem to be a bit, well, we'll get it when it's ready type of thing, and we need, if it's going for obviously the Sea Scouts, the grounds maintenance contract and lawn burials, they are very big subjects. I know with the grounds maintenance working party, I'm still waiting for some comments I sent back in a month ago. So I believe we meet soon, and let's see if we can hammer it out and see if we've got all the facts and figures that we can push the job forward. But if we're going to have an extraordinary general meeting, can we please have the agenda, you know, early, not piecemeal, you know, bit of this and bit of that, you know, because it, you know, I'm a bit of a simple lad, and once I've got a thick folder in, I can understand, but bits of paper I don't understand. Thank you.
Okay. You've minuted that, Kelly, haven't you? Yes, and officers are here, so they're aware that we're asking for the reports ASAP and not to follow. Councillor Walsh. Oh, Kevin.
Chair, just to add to that and just to comment, in terms of a couple of those reports, we're waiting for external partners to provide their reports. So I just really, I'm not looking for a get-out clause, but until we get those reports, we can't then draft the report to bring to you to OSP. So I think in terms of discussion with the chair, that date, we are hopeful we will get the reports in time to be able to draft the report so that you can have a certain amount of time to obviously read those before you sit in here. But I just wanted to put that proviso in that 2 of those we are waiting for external partners to deliver reports to us. So unless we get those, we can't give you the information, the detail that you require. So I just wanted to make sure members are aware of that some of the time we have to wait for others, and we are pushing, but we do feel that date is deliverable, and you will have the reports in applicable time to be able to read those. But I just thought it was worth mentioning that, Chair. Thank you.
Chair, I've seen you indicate, Councillor Guthridge, and from my point of view as the chair, you know, we've said the 26th, we've moved the date. I have moved the date because the date you gave originally wasn't achievable for yourselves. I knew that. So we've already moved it. So I kind of suggest if you look at it in a week's time and you don't think that's achievable, you need to get in touch with me and we will move the date.
Sorry, Chair. Coming back on that, at the first working party of the grounds maintenance contract, I asked the question, have we got officer capability and capacity to do it? And we were told yes. Now we're just getting a bit wavery along the line. So I fully support you on, you know, the dates. Just let's see what happens.
If I can just stop you, it's more around the lawn burials and the Sea Cadet stand, the grounds maintenance one. The delay might occur. I'm not aware of any other items, but doing item 14. Oh, nearly.
Comment about just basically what we're talking about is aligning meetings with the appropriate information. Now, I spoke to Steve Gore at the pre-meeting to this with regards to integrated performance reports. They're out of line with the current calendar for meetings on this OSP. I'm sure they are for others, because we've just heard second quarter. At the next meeting, we'll have third and fourth quarter. So we need to try and align reports with the actual OSP meetings accordingly. So we're actually getting a quarterly report on a quarter, rather than either very retrospective or all of a sudden we're getting 2 in 1. So it's just a matter of trying to align things so that, I say, I'm sure it happens to all of the OSPs. It's not just this particular one, but try the calendar to get it married up a little bit more so we can get the reports in a timely fashion and not too far backwards behind ourselves.
Yes. So I'm moving on to item 14, exclusion of the public and press. Recommend that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items. Members happy to move that? All in favour? Thank you. Then move on to item 15, everyone active on your